Welcome back, everyone. Happy New Year. May 2025 bring you all kinds of good things. It's me again, your host, Manu Edakara. People love to say my name in all kinds of ways. Manu, Manu, whatever. I think it's so neat because anyone can have their own spin on my name. My folks actually took two letters from each of their names to combine it and create Manu. Manu is actually not short for anything. It's not short for Emmanuel like it is in Latin communities. It's actually a name with ancient origins and might actually be one of the oldest words in the world. In fact, it might be part of some of the oldest foundational myths of humanity and a key link between cultures from ancient Greece to India. It's in essence a story about how connected we might all be. So sit tight, lean back, and enjoy as I dive into the ancient origins of the name Manu. So, modern humans, Homo sapiens, first emerged in East Africa around 300,000 years ago. Over the millennia, humans migrated out of Africa in several waves, interacting with and occasionally interbreeding with other human species like Neanderthals or Denisovans. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had spread across Europe, Asia, and beyond, developing diverse cultures and adapting to various environments. By the end of the last ice age, which was around 12,000 years ago, the advent of agriculture marked a significant turning point. This Neolithic revolution, which began around 10,000 BC in the Fertile Crescent in modern-day Middle East, enabled humans to transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyles to settled farming communities. This shift laid the foundation for the development of complex societies, trade networks, and technological advancements, which eventually gave rise to distinct cultural and linguistic groups. During the late Neolithic period, there was an interesting group of people called the Proto-Indo-Europeans. They were prehistoric and lived around 7,500 to 3,500 BC, likely in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, a region spanning modern-day Ukraine and southern Russia. They were a semi-nomadic people who domesticated horses and cattle, used wheeled vehicles, and practiced early forms of agriculture and animal husbandry. Their mastery of the horse and their innovations in transportation allowed them to spread their culture, language, and genetic influence over vast distances. This is where things get really interesting because a question I've always had is, where do we all come from? The Proto-Indo-Europeans are significant because they are the Bronze Age ancestors of a vast array of peoples across Eurasia. This expansion likely occurred in waves. Some groups moved westward into Europe, others eastward into Central and South Asia, and some southward into the Balkans and Anatolia. Through migration and cultural diffusion, they gave rise to the Indo-European language family, which today includes almost all major languages spoken across Europe and Asia, such as English, Latin, Norse, Spanish, Russian, Hindi, Greek, and Persian. This is nearly 46% of the modern world. And this is fascinating that all these different languages actually have a same root. They're all part of the same family. The reconstructed tongue of the Proto-Indo-Europeans forms the roots of language families as diverse as Romance, Italic, Germanic, Slavic, and Celtic. Now, these are all areas and languages that at first glance seem very distinct and different from each other, but upon closer inspection, there are quite a bit of similarities. While no written records of this civilization survives, and there were probably a bunch of clans and loose federation of tribes, the existence of the Proto-Indo-Europeans has been reconstructed through linguistic evidence. Now, these were a people, they probably saw race and identity very differently than we do today, but it's cool to see how their thoughts and words were formulated. Reconstructed Proto-Indo-European vocab reflects their pastoral and semi-nomadic lifestyle. Words for key concepts, animals, and tools suggest a society familiar with cattle herding, farming, and early metallurgy. You'll immediately notice their similarities to languages today. Now, a huge apology before I start. I'm not a linguist. I'm going to try my best to pronounce some of these. I'll include some of them in the description below, but I just want to highlight how similar, at least the writing of the word, looks like to other modern languages. So some family terms that have been reconstructed from Proto-Indo-European, and we're taking a guess here on how to pronounce them. Méh₂tēr means mother. Ph₂tēr means father. dhugh₂tēr means daughter. suHnús means son. Among animals, there's gwóus, it looks like, which stands for cow. éḳwos, which stands for horse, or éḳwos. h₃rēḵs, which stands for king or ruler. Or originally, it looks like he who rules over cattle. Then there's Dyaus, which is supposed to stand for sky. h₃éwsōs, which is supposed to mean dawn. And h₁nómn, which is supposed to be name. Now, just to highlight how similar these are to languages today, I'm going to look at another root word from Proto-Indo-European, which is DWO, which stands for two. In Sanskrit, that's dva, that's an Indian language. In Greek, it's Diu. In Latin, it's duo. Another root is decem, and again, I might be pronouncing this terribly, I apologize, but it's written DEKM. In Sanskrit, that's daśa. In Greek, that's deka. In Latin, it's decem, like decimal. So very interesting how the cognates today are represented from this old reconstructed language. Now you might be wondering how this is all tied into the name Manu. It does. It's actually reconstructed from this language. Now the language wasn't the only thing that has been reconstructed by scholars. We have great insights into their religion by analyzing commonalities among myths from descendant cultures, such as Greek, Celtic, Norse, Hindu, and Roman. So scholars today have pieced together the fragments of a Proto-Indo-European belief system from which all of these mythologies and religions have descended. This reconstructed religion reveals a pantheon of deities connected to natural forces, societal roles, and cosmic principles. Central to their worldview was a tripartite ideology, dividing society into three functional groups: sovereignty, so priests and rulers; warriors; and producers, so farmers and herders. These myths often explored the origin of the cosmos, the establishment of order, and humanity's relationship with the divine. Sacrificial rituals were likely integral to their religious practices, reflecting themes of death and rebirth that resonate in the midst of their descendant cultures. So I want to share some of these common mythological components because you'll immediately see some similarities into stories across myths across the world. The Proto-Indo-European pantheon included a number of securely reconstructed deities. Since they are both cognates, so they're linguistic siblings from a common origin, and associated with similar attributes and bodies of myths, such as Dyěus h₃tēr, so h₃tēr again, father, this is the daylight sky god. His consort, again, I apologize for the pronunciations here, I'll include all of their titles in the description below. The next one would be dékem, the earth mother, his daughter h₃éwsōs, the dawn goddess, his sons, the divine twins, and Sehul and méh₂tēr, a solar deity and a moon deity. So the chief deity, as I just mentioned, Dyěus, he's associated with daytime sky, light, and authority. He appears as Zeus in Greek, Jupiter, Diu-pater in Roman, and Dyaus in Vedic mythology, so early Hindu mythology. h₃éwsōs, dawn, is a goddess of the dawn, renewal, and fertility. She survives as Eos in Greek, and Aurora in Roman, and Ushas in Vedic mythology. peǩu is the thunder god. He's associated with storms, thunder, and war. Manifested as Perkunas in Baltic, Thor in Norse, Perun in Slavic, and Indra in Vedic early Hindu traditions. h₃rēḵs, or the Earth Mother, is a nurturing goddess tied to fertility and the earth. Echoes of this figure are found in the Greek Gaia and the Vedic Prithvi. And h₃rēန့s, the fire deity, is a sacred fire, often a mediator between gods and humans. His modern equivalents include Agni, the deva of fire in Hinduism, and Hephaestus, the god of fire and crafts in Greek mythology. I think this is super cool because all of these diverse cultures that we see as so different have so many parallels, and they likely originated from similar groups of people. These modern nations have actually battled each other throughout history, but if you look back far enough, they probably share the same roots. Some myths are also securely dated to Proto-Indo-European times since they both feature linguistic and thematic evidence of inherited motifs. These include a mythical figure associated with thunder, slaying a multi-headed serpent to release torrents of water that had been pent up. So this could be Zeus and Typhon, or Yahweh and the serpent in the Garden of Eden. A father slaying his son, such as Sohrab and Rostam in the Shahnameh in Persia, or King Arthur in Mordred. A foundational war, such as the Trojan War or the Mahabharata War, and the belief that the other world was guarded by a watchdog and could only be reached by crossing a river. Now, after all that expose, thanks for still riding with me here, we are now at the meaning of Manu. One of the most significant and widely studied myths of the Proto-Indo-Europeans is actually the story of, you guessed it, Manu, one of the oldest stories in the world and the foundational story of man. This beginning myth, reconstructed from parallels in Vedic, Norse, and other Indo-European traditions, is the original cosmic tale of creation. In this myth, Manu, which literally means man or first man, and his twin méh₂tēr, which is supposed to mean twin or first sacrifice, are primordial siblings who are children of the sun who play crucial roles in shaping the world. The narrative begins with Manu and méh₂tēr traveling together with their cattle, symbolizing the journey of humanity and the origins of societal structure. At a pivotal moment, méh₂tēr willingly sacrifices himself to split his body in two, a male half and a female half, embodying a prototypal separation of the sexes that continued the primordial union of the Sky Father and Mother Earth. méh₂tēr's body becomes the raw material for the creation of the cosmos. His flesh usually becomes the earth, his hair grass, his bone stone, his blood water, his eyes the sun, his mind the moon, his brain the clouds, his breath the wind, and his head the heavens. This act of sacrificial creation establishes the world and its natural order, and Manu remains, becoming the progenitor of humanity and the archetypal lawgiver. The traditions of sacrificing an animal before dispersing its parts, following socially established patterns, is a custom found commonly in ancient Rome and India, which has been interpreted as an attempt to restore the balance of the cosmos ruled by the original sacrifice. So that's pretty nuts that this story is that old. The term Manu itself is etymologically linked to the Proto-Indo-European root word Manu, or man. This connection underscores his role as a civilizing force, representing intellect, moral order, and the foundational laws that govern the newly established human society. His association with sacrifice also highlights the early Proto-Indo-European belief in the transformative power of sacrifice, a sacred act that binds the human and divine realms, ensuring the continuity of life in the cosmos. In broader cultural terms, this myth illustrates this early people's worldview, where creation is born from division, sacrifice, and transformation. The act of splitting his twin's body reflects a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. The world is a composite of divine, natural, and human elements. Now, this myth is echoed in various forms across descendant traditions. There is a similar story in Iranian mythology where there is a first priest, Manu, and his brother Yima, and a primordial ox instead of a cow. In Germanic, it's Manus with his brother Myr and a primordial cow. You've all heard of the Roman myth of Romulus and Remus, aka Remus, and they were raised by a she-wolf. And then the name that's probably most closely tied to mine is the Vedic or Hindu version of it. In Hinduism, Manu is the ancestor of all humankind, and his name literally means human. The Sanskrit word for humanity also means children of Manu. Being Manu is actually a title. In Hindu cosmology, time is divided into units of increasing magnitude, beginning with a kalpa, or a day of Brahma, who's the creator god, which spans billions of human years. So, because that's the biggest magnitude there. Each kalpa is further divided into 14 manvantaras, which are ruled by a Manu. So, he's a progenitor of humanity for that epoch. A single manvantara lasts millions of years and includes cycles of creation and renewal. Within each manvantara are 71 mahayugas, which include 4 distinct ages. The Golden Age, which is the Satya Yuga, the Treta Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, and the Kali Age, which is essentially the current age of darkness. In each of these 14 ages, there is a Manu. So again, it's a title that rises to become the first king of humanity, become the ancestor of all humans, and create the law of mankind. This concept also exists in Jainism. So right now, we are actually in the age of the 7th Manu, who is known as Vaivasata, or Shraddha Deva, or Satyavrata. He first appears in the ancient Rig Veda as the first sacrificer and founder of religious law, which is now known as the Manusmriti, or the laws of Manu. He is the brother of Yama, which, as you might recall, is very similar to the Proto-Indo-European name of Yemo, the twin, and they are both presented as sons of the solar deity Surya, that's the sun. Yama becomes the first mortal to die and thus becomes king of the underworld. This is the same myth that we just went over. The association of Manu with the ritual of sacrifice is so strong that those who do not sacrifice are actually called amanusa, which means not belonging to Manu, unlike Manu, or inhuman. So as king, Manu was actually performing penance and prayers to Lord Vishnu, who's the preserver god of the Trinity in Hinduism, by the banks of a river. One day, as he scooped water in his hands to offer it as part of his ritual, he noticed a small fish in his palm. The fish actually spoke to him and said, "Please spare me, and I'll save you in return." Manu didn't believe it, but compassionate, he placed the fish in a pot and took care of it. To Manu's astonishment, the fish grew rapidly. It outgrew the pot, so he transferred it to a container. It outgrew the container, so he put it in a pond, and finally had to put it in a river. But the fish kept growing larger and larger until he really had to just guide it to the ocean. And at this point, the fish revealed its divine identity. It was actually Lord Vishnu in the form of Matsya, who is the first avatar of the supreme god. So Vishnu, as the preserver god, comes down to earth in 10 to 44 avatars to help and save earth. Vishnu, in the form of this giant fish, informed Manu of an impending flood that would submerge the entire world. So Matsya, the fish, instructed Manu to build a large boat and to gather in it the seeds of plants, pairs of living creatures, and 7 great sages, the Saptarishis, who would help reestablish knowledge and dharma, which is code of conduct, in the new world. Now, this might sound very similar to a myth we know with a man who has a similar name to Manu, Nu, or Noah. Manu, heeding the divine guidance, constructed a massive ark. When the floodwaters rose, submerging the earth, Matsya the fish appeared once again, now with a golden horn. Manu secured the boat to Matsya's horn, and the fish guided the ark safely through the turbulent waters. After the flood, Manu's descendants populated the earth, and the kings of the lunar and solar dynasties actually trace their lineage directly to Manu. So most of the famous warriors of the epic wars in Hinduism, such as the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, actually claim descent from Manu. Now, you can pronounce my name however you want. I don't care. Like I said, I think it's cool. But I gotta admit, it was fascinating to see how far back I could trace this name. I think the etymology of names is fascinating. Like, why are things called certain things? I doubt that my folks were thinking about any of this symbology when they were creating my name. In fact, it seems very serious, very intense, but also very cool, because in some ways this is the first myth. It's the myth of creation. It's the myth of humanity. It's the myth of civilization. And it's opened my eyes into how connected we all are. The Proto-Indo-European people, whatever they might have called themselves or however they might have lived, provided the foundational aspects of some of the core ancient civilizations of the old world. All of these connections, like the very fact that the king of the gods has similar motifs in regions as diverse as Greece and India, is fascinating. The very fact that there's a great flood myth in multiple cultures, the amazing similarities between languages that are so diverse and that populate a lot of our earth. I think all of this is just really, really good reminder that we're all connected. So that's it for today. I hope all of you crush your New Year's goals, and I'll see you all in the next one.